All right, Steve. Do you remember when we met?
Yes, I do.
Well, oh, okay. I didn't. So tell me where we met.
It was a long time ago, many, many years ago. Now, I believe it was at the CrossFit Regional event at your place, so Albany CrossFit, in probably like 2010. I want to say 2011, if my
You
memory serves me right.
you had a team. Was Denise Thomas on your team?
Yes, correct.
Oh, okay, so it was like Denise was Lee on the team.
Yes.
And who are your guys?
It was Pat Burns, I
Oh,
believe.
was that the guy with the like tribal tattoos?
Yes,
All right, he blew out his Achilles, didn't he?
he did. Yes, correct.
Yeah.
Jesse Crespo.
All right.
And my 15 seconds of fame was being Austin Maliolo in a workout.
You beat him in an individual workout?
Yes.
Which one? The three clean and jerks?
No, it was actually thrusters and pull-ups, and the pull-ups were on a rig that was swaying back and forth. That we all had to sign waivers as saying that if we die, Jason Ackerman is not responsible in any way.
That I wrote about that in the new book, and I've had a lot of people. Oh, what's his name from Long Island? He goes by Tyler. He goes by like Tyler or something on Instagram. Remember Tyler McBride?
Oh yes, I do actually.
Yeah, so he complains still to this day that I cost him a spot at the games because the lanes were uneven on the sled push. I think that was the next year though.
I remember that as well.
So yeah, you and I go back pretty far, and then after that, after you did beat Austin in that workout, you had us up to New Jersey or down to New Jersey, I guess.
Well, after I beat him, I retired. That's all. That was my career right there.
Yeah, you got to go out on top. I'm reading about Muhammad Ali right now. He stayed on too long. You did it right. You got your win. You
Yeah.
get out of there. And the big, other than you've been involved in for a very long time, you have two really cool things about you related to CrossFit is that you're like the first food company that came out of CrossFit.
Yes.
I mean, you're really the first company. Is that true? Was there anyone else doing anything before you?
I believe it was there was other companies. So we definitely were not the first company. I believe that maybe the first food company. It was us in paleo treats. But I remember there was a company like a t-shirt company called Forged.
Oh yeah, Forge was out. Maybe Sin was around back then after Brutality.
I think he was after, yeah, around that time.
But I mean, you were the first true CrossFit entrepreneur. Did you have an entrepreneurial background prior to that?
Not really. I do remember though going to the second CrossFit Games, just having in the vendor village. It was literally us and maybe three other companies.
Yeah, it was probably like AsRx or Life as RX, those companies
They were
back.
there. We sold out in like the second day, and we just stood around all day on the last day and watched all the events. So it was like perfect.
And you're really one of the only ones still around though. And
Um, there's a few, but not many.
yeah,
Yeah,
I mean, and thriving. I mean, I think I texted you. This is probably going back like 2 or 3 years ago. I remember the first time I saw your stuff in like a Whole Foods, and I was like, "Holy shit, Steve has done it!" Like he's in Whole Foods. Like it was like the granola, and I was like, "Wow, this is." I was just taken aback, and to me, it was so cool that like a friend in this small little company, and I was not like in New York at the time. It was I forget where I was. It was like across the country, and I was like, "Wow, he's done it." So were you an entrepreneur prior to CrossFit?
Prior to that, not necessarily. I did work with my dad's exterminating company, and that's where I first started Steve's Club. So I did learn a lot from him. Got a lot of firsthand experience. My dad taught me a lot. I went to business school at university, and got some of the textbook business background, but that really, in looking back, wasn't very useful. Um, yeah, it's all
I
about
was
that experience.
Yeah, I was having that conversation with someone recently how he wished he had gone back to, and learned business. And I said, but you're so successful now. Who's to say if you went to school, you would have taken the same risks? You might have tried to be too by the books.
That's true. Yeah.
Um,
And also, I think a part of it is learning what you don't want to do. I think that's half of it.
You didn't want to be an exterminator the rest of your life?
Well, no, I came out of, I studied economics and did finance and worked for a big, big bank, having a really, really cool title and having wearing a shirt and tie, and made my parents really proud. But that's, I quickly realized that that's not what I want to do. I didn't want to be on a corporate treadmill and sit behind a desk and try to compete with people a lot smarter than myself. And that were willing to work till 10 o'clock at night when it was like 4:59. I was ready to bounce. I wanted to get out of there and work out and, live life. So
were your parents upset when you left that in order to start a paleo company? I mean, at the time, paleo wasn't a buzz, but your parents probably had no idea what that meant.
Parents, I have to say, I'll give them credit. They were always very, very supportive. We always had my brother and my sisters always went through different phases and had crazy ideas, and they were always pretty supportive. So they weren't like super disappointed. When I first started Steve's Club, so before, probably 2 years before starting the food company, they were a little taken back. They were definitely a little worried. They weren't sure the direction I was going with it, and they were just concerned about my safety, just being in Camden after hours, working with these, kids in the inner city. So that was definitely, they didn't know what kind of career that would lead to. So there was a lot of questions there.
So let's make it clear. You have Steve's Paleogoods, which is the food company, but then you had Steve's Club, which started a little earlier. And for those that don't know Camden, New Jersey, that's like the homicide capital of the United States. Is it the most dangerous city in the country?
I don't know if it still has the title.
Well, that's because you fixed it up.
Yeah, I'm solely responsible. No, I think it is. It's definitely one of the top cities. It's a really small city. It's only 10 square miles. But yeah, it's definitely not a very nice place to grow up in. A lot of drugs and gangs and violence.
So what made you leave corporate America to basically open a gym to help troubled youth?
Yeah, I first started working with my dad in pest control, and I thought I was going to, take over the company and start delegating and bossing people around behind my desk. And he laughed. He's like, "No, you have to get out there, learn from the bottom up." And he gave me a route working in the, in the tough neighborhoods of Camden, out of Section 8 housing complexes. And that's where I started. And I got to meet a lot of kids. And in meeting kids, I was kind of, surprised. I thought a lot of these kids had just bad attitudes and, they were just kind of like, lack of a better word, just kind of punks. And then go to find out, it's not what I was expecting. And a lot of my stereotypes were wrong. Really good kids, good attitudes, good head on their shoulders, smart kids, very athletic. And that's when I saw the need to kind of start something to help them out and to give them the guidance they needed to help get to the next step and stay on the right path.
So what was the path for you from, all right, I'm meeting these kids on my route as an exterminator to I now have a box where the kids are welcome to come and train?
Yeah, well, so there's a few steps before that. So before I even had a CrossFit box, I was just I was just following CrossFit.com. I was on the message boards, and at the time, keep in mind, it was very underground. So there wasn't. I don't recall. Actually, I don't think there was any affiliates in the nearby area. There might have been one. It was CrossFit Philly. And the guy, I don't believe he no longer runs it. He was a guy, I think Jason and Pam. They end up getting into karate, but they were like the first CrossFit in the whole tri-state area.
I mean, you had to leave the state to go find a box.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I was really into it. I was doing it at my house and telling people, I'm like, listen, will you stop wasting your time with all this, Globo stuff, and you're doing it wrong. You're doing it wrong. This is how you do it. This is how you work out. Stop wasting your time.
And you were a Globo Gym guy previously?
Yeah, I went to the gym. I worked out. I didn't know what I was doing. Started, I definitely read all the magazines and followed a few different programs and thought I was, smarter than the average guy there.
Do you remember your first CrossFit workout?
I do. It was Nancy.
So most people, their first day, they can't overhead squat. You were overhead squatting on your first workout?
With like a broomstick.
Oh, so you were like, I can't do this with, I think Nancy's at 95 pounds. Like, I'm going to use this broomstick, probably running on a treadmill. And
I was running around my neighborhood.
And you were hooked after that?
I was hooked after that. I was, working out really hard, 4 or 5 times a week. And then I did one workout that took me 15 minutes and I was smoked.
Yeah.
It really made me rethink about fitness. Like, what am I doing here? And, it was more than just looking good, looking the part, with these dumb muscles, but it was instead, just muscles that were functional. And
Hmm.
I got smoked on that workout. And that told me actually, it made me question and ask myself, am I in good shape? Am I in the shape I think I am?
Yeah, a lot of people, they come to that crossroads and they either ask themselves that question or they think to themselves, this is dumb, and they
Exactly.
don't do it. So you put your ego aside. So what was the journey? How long from that first workout of Nancy to doing something on your own establishment?
Yeah. So then in that time, I kept, learning more about CrossFit. I would go on, read the videos. I subscribed to the journal and just really just then it kind of, I started evolving more into looking over overall strength training. It just really got me interested in learning a lot about the whole strength and fitness community. And then while working for my dad in Camden, I started brainstorming all these ideas. Like, how do I make a career out of this? How do I get involved in bringing this CrossFit thing that I love doing, bring it to more people. And, once while getting to working with the kids, it just really just all came together and the light bulb went off and said like a group workout that allowed me to get the kids hooked. And then I could use that to kind of talk to them and help them develop some, just one-on-one kind of for personal development and whatnot. Like this was the perfect bridge. That's kind of how it started. I asked the property manager at one of our accounts if I could use some space. We rented some space out and I invited a few kids over. We put on the music. I told them what we were doing. They bought into my idea and they loved it.
Right away, they were in. They didn't give you any pushback on it.
No, they didn't. They were had a lot of energy, just looking for something to do. I mean, these are kids that played sports, that were running around the neighborhood. I talked to them prior to, and I explained to them that I was a strength and conditioning coach. I could help them with sports. I kind of maybe overstated my credentials, but built a little credibility, and then I got them in on the first day.
So this is maybe 2008, 2009.
Yeah.
Back then it must have been like, okay, we'll see what happens. But now we're 10 years later. What are some of the accomplishments you've had, or these kids have had because of you? And I'm not meaning like, hey, toot your own horn, but I mean, you
Yeah.
probably, I'm not probably, you changed a lot of these kids' lives. So what are some of the great examples you can just share with the listeners?
Yeah, there's a lot of different kids that came through. I could think of, I still keep in touch with a lot of the kids. A lot of them have went off to college and graduate.
That's a big deal, probably.
Big deal. Absolutely. And I can't say that I'm solely responsible. Hopefully there was some part that influenced them, that kept them on the right path. I do believe a lot of it with CrossFit is not always tangible. Outside of the physical improvements, some have really, really made fitness part of their life. Working out every day, they're competing locally. Some stopped working out. But outside of all that, I do think that it does make people better. And you can't always measure that. But I do think that it just makes people become better humans overall.
Do you hear from any of the parents? Did the parents reach out and thank you?
Not necessarily. No, not really. I think that was always a gap. Over the years and how many kids that came through Steve's Club, I could say I probably only met a handful of the parents. I don't think a lot of them even knew where their kids were. So that was always, it kind of always surprised me that a lot of them didn't know and the kids just found a way to come here. But yeah, most recently, one of our success stories is a kid named Jeremy. He went to a local high school. He came over to Steve's Club, got involved with Steve's Club probably when he was like 14. He ended up paying his way through college. So he was a janitor at the high school we graduated from. He was a custodian at night. Now they call it a custodian, a little more formal.
Yeah.
So he paid his way through Rutgers University.
Oh, great. I just had a guest on who went there as well.
Yeah, so great university. This was no satellite. This was the real campus. He was a math major. He paid his whole way through school. He recently graduated, and then he got a job as a math teacher at his old high school.
The same one he's like Goodwill Hunting.
Goodwill Hunting.
that's all because of you. I mean, I know I've had other coaches on, and I wrote something about it recently. I think like I'm very much in agreement with you. It's like some of that stuff is you can't really quantify it,
Exactly.
but those change. You can call it the black box, or like Coach Glassman would say, the greatest adaptation happens between the ears. But that's
Absolutely.
really, really awesome to see that. I remember being there, and they were great kids. They beat me in that. I remember when I was there, we did 50 deadlifts at 225 for time.
Yeah, I
You
remember
know,
that.
so that was terrible. Austin, I think, won that. I think he
Yeah.
did it in like a minute. So where was the transition? Or it wasn't so much a transition, but an addition of the food company.
Yeah, so then like probably about a year or two later after doing Steve's Club and kind of starting that, and that started growing, getting more kids, and really start looking to, I kind of more formalized it and turned it into a nonprofit. Kind of realized that we had expenses and we had to figure out a way to cover our expenses, and there was insurance, and it became, a little, I guess, company, if you will. Um, then it was probably, yeah, about a year later, I put the kids on a little challenge, on a fitness challenge or a diet challenge. It was a combination. And I said, whoever loses the most weight after 6 to 8 weeks, I would take them to anywhere in the area for lunch. That was part of the prize. Yeah, so we did like a weight test. We did a strength test. So they didn't just lose weight. They also had to continue to maintain their fitness. And look, a week later, they came back and said, Steve, we're trying our best, but during the school day, it's just so hard to find anything to eat. There's nothing to eat in the cafeteria, and we're not bringing any brown bags. Nobody does that.
Yeah.
I said, all right, well, let me see what I could do to help. And at the time, I made my own jerky at the house. Loved eating jerky on the go. For some reason, that was my thing. And I put it together in a little bag with some dried fruits and nuts, and I passed them out to all the kids. I said, here you go. This could help, kind of give you some extra fuel throughout the day. And they loved it. And they kept asking for more, and we'd make it at home. My wife and I cutting up meat in the kitchen at 12 o'clock at night. And eventually one of the kids like, why don't you put that online? We could, like the Girl Scouts, you could raise some money for our club and we could buy more equipment. And at first I wrote them off, and then eventually I put it online. And sure enough, the thing went viral. Orders started coming in, and that's kind of how it all started.
So it was one of the kids really that had the idea to sell it.
Yeah, he's like, why don't you put this online? I think people bought it. Your jerky's really, really good. What are you doing?
And that was probably before you were like vacuum sealing it too.
That was before, yeah, at the time we were just put them in like a home vacuum sealer.
Yeah.
Yeah, really like Walmart, you buy it for like $30 at Walmart.
So that was the original. What did you call? I mean, I remember the it would be all over your fingers for hours after you ate it.
Yeah.
What did you?
At first it was called a survival kit, and then when we quickly changed it to the paleo kit.
So that was the paleo kit with the blue label.
Correct.
Right. And then eventually you kind of extended out. There were some different sizes, varieties. The strawberries were so good in those.
And then, we teamed up with the local. I mean, I realized that we were onto something. There was definitely a demand out there, and there was, I guess, a void in the marketplace, right? People were looking for healthy snacks on the go. I teamed up with the local university, and they had a whole entire food incubator program. So we worked with them. They taught us all about the food safety, and I would bring over like a van full of kids every day. They would help us package it. They had all the equipment. So that was like a big pivotal point in the company, just building that foundation and doing it right.
And I think it was so cool because you knew when you were buying those back then that you were supporting a good cause as well. You'd get their cards, or you'd have one of the kids on it. You would give like handwritten notes, and then when I finally got there, seeing the kids actually work on it was really cool. You basically, all in house with the same kids that you're taking them off the streets, and not only just making them work out, but teaching them life lessons now.
Exactly. Yep. Yeah, it served two purposes. First, it was also to raise money, and then the second part, they worked. So it gave them like an opportunity to make money in a legit way, and so it really it all came together. It worked out pretty nicely.
And you knew nothing about this other than you were making it you didn't have a background in food or any of that.
No, I didn't. No,
you knew how to keep like rodents out of the kitchen because of your exterminating background, but you didn't know the ins and outs, margins, all that stuff.
No, I didn't know any of that. I mean, I was, I consider myself a pretty quick learner if I'm really interested in something. And this was just like, it filled all my passions. I love food. I love cooking. I love working with kids. It kind of, yeah, I guess the stars aligned and, gave me the career that kind of was perfect for me.
So you started with the Paleo kit. How many products do you have today, 10 years later?
Oh, 10 years later, we have too many. So we're now in the process of trying to cut SKUs.
Well, I mean, you had dressings, you had paleo sticks,
yeah,
granola, you had the granola bars, the tubs. Yeah.
So yeah, we have over 100 products.
And what have you learned? What's ideal for a company your size?
In terms of products, product mix.
Yeah, how many?
Yeah, I mean, I guess it really depends on. Every company's different. It depends on who your target market is, where your channels are. We have more of like an omni-channel approach. So we're in multiple channels. We have retail, we have direct online, we work with independents. So we have a lot of different channels, and each one has a different kind of portfolio. But ideally, for a small company started out, if I was going to give any advice, I would advise to stay focused on maybe 3 to 5 products, one product line.
And knowing that now, what's your best seller?
Well, the best seller in terms of volume is probably the granola, the grainless granola. So the Paleo Crunch grainless granola, that's in the most places. So that's in the most retail stores.
And that comes in the new kind of nicer package.
Correct. Yeah.
I mean, back in the day, it was a tub. It was like the same tub you get in Chinese food.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Online, we sell a lot of jerky. That seems to be very popular. But yeah, you got to think like when starting out, there wasn't as much competition. So we quickly, realized that there was a need for different categories that nobody was doing really well. And, we quickly identified different categories, whether it was the dressings, the dried fruit, and said, hey, we could do this really well. And we can offer a really good product. Now, fast forward to today, if I was to start Steve's Paleogoods, I definitely would not come out with as many products. But when I started it and the timing I did, it made sense at the time.
So how do you learn that? For example, I remember you all of a sudden had dressings.
Yeah.
How did, it makes sense. Jerky, you eat jerky as a kid. Okay, I need to have jerky. What goes through your mind when you're like, I'm going to make some dressing now?
Yeah. I mean, the easy answer is to say I was looking myself for, a good dressing and couldn't find one. I mean, that's partly it. But I'm not going to lie and say that it wasn't also like an opportunity in the marketplace. I didn't think anybody was doing it really well. And then like we always followed the mantra of meats, nuts, seeds, fruits. What's the saying? I know you said it a million times.
Meats, vegetables, nuts, seeds, some fruit, little starch, no sugar.
See that? I knew you could rehearse it a lot better than I could. Exactly. So like that was our overarching, kind of what we want to stay within our parameters. So we tried to cover all those bases and do each one as well as we could. Whether the jerky for the meat, we had the dried fruits, the granola for the nuts, the dressings, help people kind of, just add more flavor to their real food. And then most recently, we just acquired another small company that does a whole line of fermented product. And that covered the whole vegetable part of it. So
you acquired Zuke Live Foods. That's more like kimchi, sauerkraut type stuff?
Yeah, exactly. So fermented food, the kimchi, the kraut is really popular. And then we also have a line of gut shots, or gut power, we call them. So shots of gut power. They're 2-ounce little shots. And all we do is we get organic vegetables. We press them, all the juices that come out, and we let them ferment for 4 to 6 weeks. They sit in these big vats, and that's where they collect all the live probiotic cultures, and that turns into a little shot, and people throw them back. It's good for gut health, your immune system, and just an overall kind of wellness shot.
I'm huge into that stuff. I love kimchi and sauerkraut, and I have some every night with dinner. I came back from a level 1 in Greece so sick, and that was one of the best things I ever did to fix up my stomach.
Yeah. I had a lot of personal digestive issues myself over the last couple of years, and I kind of, looked for ways of fixing my gut, like I guess natural ways. And just in all my research, I found that eating a lot of vegetables and introducing a lot of fermented foods in your diet really makes a huge difference.
So let me ask you a question. You and I haven't discussed this. What was your feeling when RX sold for like a couple $1 billion?
So I guess I would have to honestly say, like,
you're about to answer it diplomatically, I can tell.
15% of my brain was probably jealous.
Yeah.
Like, wow, good for them. Small snack company. That could have been us.
Yeah.
But no, honestly, I think it's their story is one of the most impressive stories out there. He did it without raising any capital, which I don't know, honestly, any other food company that has done that. So that says a lot. Yeah, it's just really impressive. And I think, they created, RX has created a whole category around just healthy eating, clean food, minimum ingredients. They did a really good job with all that. And they deserve it at the end of the day.
Are you friendly with the owner?
I can't say I'm friendly, but I'm not unfriendly. I haven't really met him in person.
Okay, I didn't know if you had ever. I was like, I'm curious to know like what his lifestyle went from, making these bars in his mom's basement to, an incredible amount of money. Like
swimming in money right now.
Yeah, he's I don't know what they sold for, but it was an incredible amount, right?
600 million.
Yeah, that's a good amount. And so I just wonder how his life has changed over those, 7-8 years.
Well, apparently he's still working for the company. So that's kind of what a lot of companies are doing now. Food companies, they're selling to big food, to the bigger companies, and still running the ship as a separate company where they have their own autonomy and running the same team.
Yeah, and it's, every time, speaking of like Whole Foods, every time we're there, there's a new product by them too now.
Yes.
We just saw like a jar of peanut butter that's theirs now.
Yeah, so when these big companies take over, I guess they try to squeeze as much out of the money as they can to get their investment back, and they quickly just come out with line extensions and new flavors and trying to expand it, I guess, to places that it's not in.
So is that the goal of yours, to be acquired by somebody like Kellogg's, or do you foresee yourself running Steve's Paleogoods forever?
Well, if I had a choice, and if there was a crystal ball and somebody said I could do this forever, I would. It's also very challenging to run a small food company. It's very competitive. It does require a lot of capital to compete with the other companies out there that are well capitalized. So it's very challenging. If I continue to do it, I would. I guess, sometime down the road, I could see, perhaps kind of combining resources maybe with a bigger company. That way I can expand the product reach, our brand awareness. And then, ultimately, at the end of the day, if, the better that Steve's Paleogoods does, we can give a kickback to the Steve's Club. And that will help overall, just build the Steve's Club program. And that's ultimately, that would put the biggest smile on my face more than anything.
Right. So the goal and vision of the company hasn't changed. It's still to help the kids.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's a huge driving force. That's like the engine behind what we do. I started Steve's Club before the food company. So it's definitely not just marketing and something we could just put on a package to separate us. It's really who we are and what we do. I run Steve's Club every day. We have our leadership camp at the end of July where we invite 25 to 30 kids from our Steve's Clubs all over the country for just an entire week, immersion week at Fort Indiantown Gap. It's a military base about an hour and a half from here in Pennsauken. We have a lot of different leaders in the community that come in. This year we have some special guests. We have, who do we have this year? It escaped my memory because a few of them.
From CrossFit, from the CrossFit world?
Yeah, I'm sorry, Todd. So Todd, the head, I think you worked with Todd, right, at the level ones?
Todd Whitman?
Yeah, Todd Whitman.
Yeah, big deal.
Yeah, real big deal. So we're really excited to have Todd. And then also Tosh is going to be a guest this year.
Two awesome people and two huge badasses.
Exactly. I just saw your face like You have a
Yeah.
lot of, I can tell you have a lot of respect for those guys.
Yeah. Tosh and I actually did our level 2 together back. I had Spieler on recently. Spieler, Tosh, and I were all at the same level 2. But if you've not seen Tosh, he's the guy that ran 24 hours in a shipping container,
Ah,
and I think he ran nearly 100 miles. But it was all about being in the dark, no sensory. And he's
yeah.
just a, Google Brian Contosh, Chontosh, and you'll see some. For the listeners, you'll see how amazing that guy is.
Yeah,
Well,
he's an incredible person. So is Todd. Todd, we're extremely excited to have both of them, and it just goes to show like this, this whole CrossFit and how big the community is, even despite how big the sport of CrossFit has become, and even how many affiliates are out there. Like there's still just some really good selfless individuals. I mean, they're donating their time. They're flying out to, I mean, Fort Indian Town Gap in the middle of nowhere. And I know they have lots of other things they could be doing with their time. So it just speaks volumes about, the type of people in our community.
so when you were coaching these kids, and when you do coach them, what has been your biggest lesson in working with them?
I guess like overall when we're coaching, just the biggest lesson is the reason they're there. I get really excited, to teach them about CrossFit and to help them become a better athlete. Because I know that translates into the other aspects of their life. Then, they'll take that home and they'll just, overall feel better about themselves. And, they'll have more of a, I guess, inclination to kind of surround themselves with the right people. Like there's so many transfer things just from basically making them a better athlete in the gym. So I try to keep in mind the reason they're there though, so rather than getting too caught up into all the minute details of like learning to clean, which is very important. It's important for them to feel like they're a part of something bigger and, they're a part of this whole atmosphere that's just, a positive place for them to get away from it all. So I constantly try to just make the environment just a high energy, a really fun place. And then, I do really put a lot of emphasis on the coaching. We have done that since day one. We want them to make sure they're doing it correctly. They're learning the right movements. It's not just having kids, blast on music and popping out air squats and jumping on the pull-up bar. Like, we do coach here, and we put we take a lot of pride in that. But overall, it's important that they're a part of that they make the environment what it is.
Sounds like you're someone that's just helping people have the best hour of their day.
Exactly. You just summed it up the best.
In 4 words. So I always like to ask every guest that's on the show a book they recommend that the listeners read.
Ooh, good one. I recently read a book called, this is just because this topic is hot in my world right now. And it's something that's helped me. It's called Healthy Gut, Healthy You. It's a very good book on just kind of naturally fixing your gut health. I know a lot of people have different gut issues, especially in like the fitness and health community, just years of, being taught just pounding protein shakes, if you're on a super strict keto diet, which all that is fine and well and good and all, and I don't have any strong opinions on them, but, all that does change the gut flora and it changes your gut health. So I think it's a really good, I highly recommend that book.
Definitely something people should take more of an interest in. Everybody's into tracking macros or counting these days to eat the right amount, which is obviously important, but you also need to know what's going on the inside. And like I said, I was messed up for about 3 months. And that was when I was like, okay, I need to take, the probiotics, and I need to really be aware of what I'm doing. And for me, it's like, well, I might as well just continue it because I feel good.
Yeah, and I think it's obviously everything's always individual, but it doesn't matter what you eat. I mean, as long as like the most important thing is first that you're digesting it correctly, and that you have all the good bacteria to fight it off. All that stuff is so important. You could really focus on the macros. You could focus on the quantities, the qualities. You can go down the list. But if you're not digesting it and you don't have a good gut flora, then it really doesn't matter.
So over 10 years later, how do you stay motivated to work out?
Ooh, how do I stay
Well,
motivated?
I'm assuming you're working out still. You look good.
Thanks.
What are you hitting CrossFit workouts right now?
Absolutely, yeah. So I mean, I guess in the last probably 12 years, taken a few breaks, but yeah, I've always continued to work out. I mean, I've always kind of been self motivated with that on my own. When I don't work out, I feel terrible. So it's definitely the best alternative. Um, but honestly, yeah, like I mean, I guess it's just easy. I have, I work out with the kids during Steve's Club. So I'll spend, the first half hour teaching everything, and then, I'll get in there, and as long as there's nobody that's like brand spanking new, I'll get in there and work out with them. So it's kind of really just put myself, once you're in that atmosphere and you're around the right people, it makes it so much easier.
Have have any of the kids gotten to the point in their time with you where they got better than you?
Oh, yeah. I would say, let's say today we do a workout at 4 o'clock and we have 10 kids. I would say at least 3 or 4 beat me by a round.
That's not good enough, Steve. That's not acceptable. Uh,
That's not saying a whole lot because I'm not, saying I'm the best athlete, but a lot of these kids have really kind of taken it to the next level in terms of their commitment. I mean, they come here on days off. I mean, they're spending time learning the ollie, like they're putting a lot of time into it.
so going from beating Austin Malleolo to losing to the kids of Camden. That's the Steve Liberati story.
Well, you also have to keep in mind back in the day, we were all weekend warriors. If you worked out twice a day, you were considered nuts. We worked out 4 times a week and competed. So,
and not to mention back then. I mean, how old are you now?
I'll be 40 in January.
So
So,
those of us that were competing back then, we were already 30.
yeah.
Or nearly 30. The guys coming up these days. I mean, I had Dallin Pepper on recently, the 17-year-old champ. He's trying to go right to the games at 18. That's an unfair. You test his testosterone next to a guy in his 40s. It's not fair. But I'm
Well, you'll hear
sure
people say that age doesn't matter, but I mean, physiologically, that's not true. It does matter.
back in the day, there's people like Bill Grunler. I remember him specifically not wanting to go to Masters.
Yeah.
Because back then it was like, okay, the 35, 40-year-olds can hang. This day and age, it's a whole different sport.
Oh, yeah. It's the same thing in pro sports. I mean, look at the professional hockey players, baseball players. They're 18 to 21-year-olds. They
Yeah.
have the recovery. They have, they have the testosterone. It's just, yeah, it favors the young guy.
I'm sure part of you, no one likes to lose, but it must be nice to see that these kids, are choosing to be exercising, working out versus, hanging in the street. So I'm sure there's part of you that's happy they're beating you.
Absolutely. And they're making it their lifestyle, and my whole thing is like, I can only reach so many kids, but if I could reach the right ones, then they can in turn become beacons in the community and they can kind of turn around and they could teach it to kids if they're really, really into it. So, it's not about how many kids I could teach directly, but it's about how many, just kind of spreading it so it has that ripple effect.
So, and do the kids just kind of show up with other buddies and they're like, hey, this is the place I was telling you about?
Exactly. It's all been word of mouth through the years. Yeah, we have a class every day at 4 o'clock. It's a structured class. But kids come in, like there's some open gym time, come in on their own. But yeah, of course, everybody kind of gets the bug and they always bring in some friends.
How many kids would you say have come through the doors?
So I would say, I mean, over in the last 10 years,
Yeah.
let's say maybe 100 each year.
So 1,000 kids you've influenced.
Yeah, I mean, probably more or less, but the number, it's like anything else. It's really the quality.
Yeah.
I would rather have 5 kids in the class, kids that want to be there. They're not forced to be there. They're coachable. They're going to go out in the community and, teach it to somebody else. They're going to be here for every day, all year round, rain, snow, doesn't matter. I want those 5 kids. I don't want 20 kids in the class just to say I have 20 kids and look at this.
Right.
I don't get any commission. I don't have a for-profit model, so that doesn't matter to me. It's not about the numbers.
Have you gotten any thanks from the community outside of what you're, internally? Like, did the police department come over? Did people come over? And, I think sometimes it's just the people I have on we forget how much of an influence we've had, and it's hard sometimes. It's a little thankless to be a coach at times. Have you heard it from the community at all?
Yeah, you get things every once in a while. I wouldn't say I was on, got a headline on the front page of the paper, and I'm not looking for that. I can
Yeah.
honestly say that. I do because I see it out of my own eyes, and just the relationships that I build with the kids, and I see the differences in their attitudes. That's enough for me. But yeah, I don't really need, I guess, a plaque or, a shout out. That's cool and all, but at this point in doing it, I guess you could say I'm doing it selfishly because I'm happy to see the difference it makes.
Well, I'll give you a little shout out because it's been really cool to see. I still get a little bit of a goosebump feeling every time I see Steve's Club stuff at Whole Foods or wherever I am. So it's really, I mean, it's in some big places these days. So
Yeah.
it's really cool to see that. I feel like I had a really small part in this. When we used to order it and sell it at Albany CrossFit, and truth be told, I ate most of that. So we'd sell it, but I would just all the coaches would just basically snack on it. I was definitely losing money on that, but it was well worth it. So
Didn't you once you started snacking so much, you all of a sudden had like this 12 pack? Isn't that?
that was a big part of it. I mean, the beauty of it that I still love about it is you can track it. The macros are right on there.
Yeah.
The meat sticks are easy when you want just a little bit of protein. You can keep. They're great on the road. Even and the kits are still delicious. I love this. The varieties that you now offer. If someone hadn't heard of you, where can they go to buy some?
The best thing is online, directly online. That's the best place. Stevespaleogoods.com. We're also in a lot of different retailers, Whole Foods, Kroger, a lot of small mom and pops. We recently got into Sprouts, so you'll see us in Sprouts in the next 2 months. So we're pretty excited about that. Yeah, just you can find us in different retailers, but yeah, the best place is always online.
Yeah, very cool. Yeah, we just had a Sprouts open literally across the street, so
Oh,
hopefully we'll
cool.
see you in there soon. But it's been great catching up with you. Anything I missed? Anything you want to mention or talk about?
I think you covered it all.
I try to. I take some notes. I do a little research. I knew you pretty well. It's been great catching up, and we'll have to get a rematch of you in Austin at some point. Once Austin hits 10 more years, when he gets to 40, we'll have a rematch. We'll get that rig is still there, by the way.
Yeah, I think it would be safe to say that Austin would probably beat me if it was like 10 rounds for time. Yeah, he would probably beat me by quite a long shot there.
It's amazing to see his progress as well. Yeah, that rig is there. It's like a monument. Now it is cemented into the ground versus just sitting above the cement. So it's a little more of a useful apparatus these days.
Well, it always impresses me too. I have to throw this out there, give Austin the credit he deserves. Is there's a lot of good athletes. A lot of the athletes are younger. They have a lot of time. It always impressed me with Austin that he had his career. He now has a family, so he was balancing so much. Being the head trainer at Reebok, he was also involved, from what I understand, the business side. He was doing the certs. So that impressed me more than anything. Somebody that maintain that balance, which is juggling so many things on their plate. That's pretty impressive. Where they're able to keep fitness, a big part of their life.
Yeah, I always refer to him as the hardest working man in CrossFit. So it's good to have him as a friend, and he's a really both you guys. That's the beauty of CrossFit. You just meet some amazing people.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Well, thanks again, Steve, for coming on, and I hope everybody goes and checks you guys out if they haven't already. It's delicious. It's good for you, and it supports a great cause.
Thanks for having me today, Jason.